Everyone knows the story. You crack open an ancient tomb, unleash a vengeful spirit, and pay the price. In 1923, right as the man who funded the discovery of King Tut's tomb died, the lights across Cairo suddenly went out. Soon after, a string of mysterious deaths followed. But if you go back to 1922, there was no supernatural glamour in the Valley of the Kings. It was just heat, rock, and relentless labor. Hundreds of Egyptian workers spent years moving mountains of rubble by hand, looking for a tomb that might not even exist. Howard Carter led the excavation. Far from a wealthy aristocrat treating Egypt as a playground, Carter was an obsessive, exhausted archaeologist running out of time. Carter's backer, Lord Carnarvon, had poured a fortune into the Egyptian sand, but 5 years of digging, combined with massive post-World War I taxes, had nearly drained his accounts. He simply could not afford to keep the expedition going. To solve this cash crisis, Carnarvon made a drastic move. He signed an exclusive contract with the Times of London. In exchange for £5,000 up front, the Times got the absolute monopoly over all updates, photographs, and stories about the tomb. By solving his immediate funding problem, Carnarvon accidentally engineered a massive global information vacuum. He locked the rest of the world's media out of the century's most significant archaeological find, setting the perfect stage for a fabrication. Within weeks of Carter finding the steps to the tomb, hundreds of journalists from America, France, and local Egyptian papers descended on Luxor, but armed police kept them trapped behind a rope line, legally barred from getting anywhere near the artifacts. Back home, newspaper editors were screaming for daily updates. The public was hungry for gold and mummies, and these reporters were stuck in the desert with absolutely nothing to write about. When reporters are completely walled off from the facts, they still have an economic incentive to produce a story. If they can't report the truth, they will manufacture a narrative of their own. One of those excluded reporters was Arthur Weigel, a correspondent for the Daily Mail. Weigel was a former Egyptologist himself, and he felt deeply humiliated by Carter locking him out. He needed an angle that didn't rely on the gold inside the tomb. He found his angle in a remarkably ordinary medical tragedy. While staying at the Continental Savoy Hotel in Cairo, Lord Carnarvon accidentally sliced open a mosquito bite while shaving. The wound got infected, developed into blood poisoning, and ultimately killed him. And that famous Cairo blackout that supposedly marked his death, it was a common, well-documented symptom of the city's failing post-war electrical grid. But Arthur Weigel didn't report a tragic infection and a faulty power grid. He took the mosquito bite, combined it with the blackout, and mixed in his own spite to author the very first headline warning of the curse of the pharaohs. A deeply personal grudge took an everyday medical accident and repackaged it into a highly marketable thriller. Weigel couldn't sell a photograph of a golden throne, so he sold a ghost story instead. The lie spread instantly. Newspapers in New York, Paris, and Tokyo grabbed Weigel's curse narrative and ran with it. It was the perfect loophole. They couldn't write about the physical artifacts because of the Times monopoly, but nobody owned the copyright on an invisible curse. The myth gained mainstream legitimacy when trusted intellectuals stepped in. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the famous creator of Sherlock Holmes, publicly endorsed the idea, telling the press he truly believed an evil elemental spirit was guarding the tomb. From there, confirmation bias took over entirely. If a radiologist who briefly visited the site died of natural causes a year later, the headlines screamed that the curse had struck again. It became a self-sustaining media virus. Once a sensational story achieves critical mass, the public appetite for a thrill completely overrides any factual reporting. We can test this against historical data. This diagram shows the 58 people present when the tomb and sarcophagus opened. Of those 58, only 8 died within a dozen years. Clinical records show all 8 passed from natural conditions. The math doesn't support the magic. Howard Carter, the man who actually breached the seal and spent 10 years breathing the dust of the burial chamber, survived for another 17 years. He meticulously cataloged this golden mask and thousands of other artifacts, quietly passing away from natural causes at age 64. The pharaoh's curse is entirely devoid of ancient magic. It is a modern cautionary tale, showing how an opportunistic press, locked out by a corporate monopoly, can engineer a lie so powerful it outlives the truth by a century.